Hello, and welcome to Temple of the False Pod, where decks are not optimized, but are plays sure as heck are fun. I'm Andy.
I'm Bruce.
That he is. And today, much like last week, because this season's all wacky, we've got a deck tale. And we have a Bruce deck, but not last week's Bruce deck, because that was Andy's Bruce deck. This is a Bruce deck.
It is. Gorm and Virtus. Yeah. Part of me just wanted to put together. I had yet to build any deck with partner, and I thought rather than building finding two commanders that just to both have partner and jamming them together, or finding a combination that worked, I thought I would go with one of the partner with commanders. And Gorm and Virtus was one of the ones that I had on my radar for quite some time, because I like creature combat. I like our play group is very combat oriented. So I thought this would be, what a great pair. For those who don't know, it is Gorm the Great and Virtus the Veiled. And let's talk about Gorm the Great first. He is the Great. So for 3 and a green, he is a legendary creature, giant warrior, partner with Virtus the Veiled. Gorm has vigilance, and Gorm the Great must be blocked if able, and Gorm must be blocked by 2 or more creatures if able. By the way, he is a 2/7. So
goes right in a tree folk deck.
Yes.
Trunk of a man.
Definitely. Well, I mean, just take one look at the size of those shields, and
Yeah.
I think the whole idea here is that he's quasi lure. So if you swing with Gorm, your opponent, if they have 2 or more creatures, have to block with at least 2 of them, or have to block with 2 of them. If they only have 1 creature, they have to block Gorm with that creature. So knowing that, it's hardly a surprise that Virtus the Veiled gets some kind of benefit when he gets in unblocked. So Virtus the Veiled, he is 2 and a black, a legendary creature, Azra Assassin. He partners with Gorm the Great. Virtus has Death Touch, is a 1/1 creature. Whenever Virtus the Veiled deals combat damage to a player, that player loses half their life, rounded up.
Whoa.
So Virtus, assuming he's getting through on your opponent, and your opponent hasn't taken any damage yet, the opponent at 40 goes down to 39, and then they lose half their life, rounded up. In other words, they go to 19 because they're going to lose 10 more. So on that first swing, if Gormus can hit, if Virtus hits, you're looking at they're looking at losing 20 life right off the bat. This is a powerful combo if you can make it work, and that's what this deck is all about, is trying to make it work. So
yeah. I really like it. I'm a big fan of partner with, especially over partner, because I do feel like the fun is in the like relatedness of the mechanics.
Right. And let's be honest, partner with means that they can make the cards a little bit more powerful, because they know you're only working it. The commander, if you're going to use a partner, it has to be that one. So they don't have to worry about, partnering Gorm. If Gorm just had partner, maybe you find a different creature that's more powerful than Virtus, and just have him partner with that. The idea that he partners with Virtus means that the Wizards gets a lot more control as far as what they can do with the cards. So initially, when I built the deck, the idea was, let's ramp these guys, get them out as early as we can, swing with both. And then, my opponent will have to block Gorm. Virtus gets through undamaged and does a massive pile of damage. Now, admittedly, as you get closer to 0, that number of the damage that Virtus does goes down, but you still get there. I mean, you're still doing the damage. It's still effective. And I thought, okay, I'll do this. I'm going to give this a try. And then as I was putting the deck together, I reread Gorm. And Gorm's ability is not Lure. And for those of you who don't know Lure, Gorm does not force all of your opponent's creatures to block Gorm. Gorm only forces 2 of them, up to 2 of them, to block. So if your opponent has 3 creatures, Gorm demands that 2 of them block Gorm, but then you still have one left. That opponent still has 1 left to block Virtus. Now, Virtus does have Death Touch, but Virtus is a 1/1. It's going to kill that creature, but it's going to die. But Virtus is going to die. I'm not even sure if it's him. I think I'm not sure. Either way, Virtus is going to die. So then you're forced to pay their commander tax to bring them back out. And now we're talking about, suddenly it's not as effective, especially as you get into the late game, because you're doing less damage, and the likelihood that your opponents have now have multiple blockers out goes way up, especially when they realize that what Virtus and Gorm do. If you realize that, then your opponent can sit there with 3 token creatures, and then they're fine. They know they can block Virtus. That's not particularly fun. So I recognized this early on in the build. So then I started putting in a lot more other ways to make Gorm, a little more helpful, or to find ways where Virtus doesn't necessarily need Gorm there. If I can make Virtus unblockable, or however else I can find ways to do that. I mean, in the end, the goal of the deck is to hit with Virtus as often as possible. The deck says Gorm and Virtus. Gorm gets significantly overshadowed here. Of the games that I've played, I've had one game where getting them both out and swinging with both was truly effective, and it worked really well. But of the other games, out of all the other games, it's just Virtus, and you find a way to get Virtus in, however you end up doing that. So that's pretty much the deck is just, it's straight up combat damage. There's not a whole lot of other tricks to it. So
yeah, just get them through and figure it out.
Right.
I like that it does that. I don't think I've ever seen this deck in action, but from the things that you've told me, it does, like, even if it doesn't do the thing right away, because I mean, like, with Virtus to like be like really efficient, it's either got to be early or fairly late game where life totals are relatively low anyway.
Right. Now, the difficulty that I found with the deck is, okay, so first off, the deck wins more than half of the games it plays. And
Whoa.
In our play group, that's a lot. That's a lot for most play groups, because if your deck wins over half the time and there's 4 players in your group, it's winning way more often than it should. The key with this deck, I find, is take the early hit when you can get it, but a lot of times don't go too crazy.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to get too far out. I really don't want this deck to make a name for itself as, ooh, this is the deck that hits hard really fast. We got to go after it. Because for the most part, when you're doing combat damage, Virtus only hits 1 player at a time.
Right.
So even if I can do it on 4 consecutive turns, we're now talking turns 7 or 8, and all I've done is put everybody down to around 20. That's not helpful. I mean, that's halfway, and we're already out to turn 7 or 8. So there has to be more than just that. Your opponents have to be moving and attacking each other and doing all that stuff. You have to be just part of the game. It can't just be, Virtus swinging in and trying to kill somebody off. It just that's a lot to ask. So
yeah.
And I don't want to be keyed up.
What do you think is the like? Because you look at these two creatures and you're not like nothing about it seems like that threatening. Like it's got the quietest spike thing, but it's like you said, that still leaves your opponent at 20.
Right.
Is it the death touch that really hits home for the play group, or
that's the interesting part, is that the group doesn't see this as super threatening. And I think people are now sort of understanding. It's just it can't do it by itself.
It's not threatening. It just wins most games.
Yes, but at the same time, it's like I look at games where I've seen opponents play quietest spike on a creature.
Right.
Everybody goes nuts.
Yeah.
Because, oh my God, half my life total. When I flip over Gorman Virtus as my commanders to start a game, nobody's like, oh my God, he's got quietest spike in the command zone. Nobody
for 3 mana.
For 3 mana. And, and if you hit it right, get that arcane signet out, you could be swinging early. And, there are ways to get to get it going. I mean, Soul Ring turn 1, turn 2, Virtus turn 3, you swing and do 20 damage. Because on turn 3, at least one of your opponents doesn't have a creature out.
Right.
And
like I've had
Virtus,
that. Yeah, I've had that with my Bruce deck, and it is just. I mean, as we were talking about last week, Bruce and Kedis, it really does just impact the board entirely. But with Virtus, it's
right.
It's a lot. Good thing that doesn't count as commander damage. I mean, because mostly it's not damage, but it's also not combat damage.
Right. I think that a lot of what's happening is, I think people are looking at this and saying, I can stop this. All you need is 3 creatures. 3 creatures is all it takes. And people start looking at this going, as long as I don't get hit first, then I've got my defense up and I'll be fine. And sometimes, some games that's true, and other games it's not. And that sort of drops us kind of into what we're looking at.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just looking at the one of the slots I have listed is called Getting Through.
That's what I was about to bring up, because
now,
I feel like you're saying now, okay, if I had 3 creatures, then I don't have to worry about it. But Archfiend of Depravity really kind of is not counterintuitive there, but it helps solidify that they won't ever have 3 creatures unless they've got tokens that can be made through activations or flash or whatever.
Right. And a card like Archfiend of Depravity, it's built for this deck. You give your opponents 2 creatures. Well, look at that. Gorm forces them to block. Gorm. So Virtus gets through. I couldn't ask for a card that more fits the deck than Archfiend of Depravity. That it's tailor-made for this. And it also lets your opponents keep their 2 best creatures. And you would be surprised, most of the time, that's more than enough for your opponents. I just had a game last week with Archfiend of Depravity out, and I watched each of my opponents as we went around the board. One person sacrificed nothing. The other person sacrificed 6 of their creatures. 5 of them were token creatures. And another person only had 1 creature out. So the Archfiend hit 1 person and only took out their tokens. But with Gorm and Virtus out, great. Come my next turn, I get my choice. Who do I want to knock? And whose life total do I want to knock down?
Yeah.
So
that's pretty nuts.
It is. So the other one is another card in that group is Douthie Embrace, and I don't remember if we featured this on Temple's Treasures, but I wouldn't be surprised if we did, because Douthie Embrace is it's for 2 and a black. It's an enchantment. It's from Tempest, so it's way back there, and it reads for black. Target creature gains shadow until the end of the turn. Nobody,
yeah.
Right? Nobody is playing with shadow creatures anymore. They just aren't. So you give Virtus shadow. Virtus goes through unblocked because nobody else is playing a shadow creature. You're fine. You get through. It makes him unblockable. And there's a few other benefits. The Douthie Embrace, you can use that on your opponent's creatures. So if an opponent has 1 blocker, you can give it shadow, so that way it can't block when other people are swinging. So
or if they have 3 creatures.
If they have 3 creatures, you give one of them shadow, and then you can use Gorman Virtus if you want. However you want to use it.
And for those who don't know, shadow means this creature, a creature with shadow can block or be blocked by only creatures with shadow.
Right.
So it's kind of 2 ways: unblockable, but unblockable. can't block, and unblockable.
Right. Now,
which is awesome.
Right, and for Virtus, it's only until the end of the turn.
Right.
So, if you want to use it some other way, you can certainly do that. It's got that flexibility, and in a deck like this where the goal is for Virtus to do damage, you want ways to get him through. Douthie Embrace is one of those ways. The other one in that list is Whisper Silk Cloak.
Classic.
I mean, it's classic. It's pretty obvious. It has Shroud, but for the most part, I'm happy with just Whisper Silk Cloak on Virtus. That's kind of enough. You get through. Now, there's only 3 there, but I should mention in the land section, Rogue's Passage is there.
Of course.
Another classic. And Shizo Death's Storehouse. For a black and tap, target legendary creature gains fear until the end of the turn.
Okay.
Not 100% foolproof, but
mostly.
Only black and artifact creatures can stop it. So
I mean, compared to
it better.
compared to the 5 mana that Rogue's Passage needs, Shizo is just 2. I mean,
just 2
and 1, but
right. And the other one I included was Access Tunnel, and this card is relatively new to me. I mean, I'm sure that others have seen it hundreds of times already, but for Access Tunnel, it's essentially Rogue's Passage, but instead of paying 4, you pay 3, and it only works when the target creature with a power 3 or less.
Right.
So, in this case, Virtus is almost always a 1/1. There are times when he gets pumped a little bit, but almost never above 3. So the Access Tunnel just works.
It's hardly relevant. Like,
I'm not trying to make Gorm big. I'm not trying to make Virtus big.
Right.
I'm just trying to I just need to do 1 damage.
Yeah.
And then we work from there. So, but yeah, so those are some of the options as far as, ways to get Virtus through. So,
let's see. Your ramp package seems pretty standard.
The ramp package is pretty standard. There's only 2 pieces in there that I think are at all relevant. Tempt with Discovery.
Yeah.
It lets you search for a land card. So this way I can go in and get Shizu, or I can get the Access Tunnel, or whatever.
Right.
And I'm probably going to get at least 2 lands, because certainly somebody else will also search for a land, which lets me search for 2. It's just going to happen. People are not going to give up the value, and they eventually, if you're lucky enough, and the first person you ask caves and goes for the land, everybody goes for the land, because now suddenly nobody wants to be behind. So works for me. More importantly, though, Sword of the Animist. This is one when you equip it to Virtus, because when a equipped creature attacks, you may search your library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. you're planning to attack with Virtus. That's
Yeah.
that's the whole reason.
Yeah.
Virtus is not out there as a blocker. Virtus is out there to swing. So Lord of the Animist is a good one for him, and Bear Umbra is the other one that I'm sort of thinking about. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and has, whenever this creature attacks, untap all lands you control. So all of your land, so you can do stuff before you do combat. Swing with Virtus, all your lands untap. You do 3 points of damage with Virtus, and then you cut their life in half, assuming you actually hit the opponent.
And as totem armor,
yes.
which is relevant. I mean,
it definitely is.
I mean, I think it's always relevant, but with Virtus, it is. I feel like the classic example of a creature that you never don't want to attack because it's either going to kill something or do its thing, and I think in most cases, either option is pretty good. Granted, you could just be killing off a 1/1 and Virtus dies, but if you're even killing a 2/2, and you have Bear Umbra, the Bear Umbra falls off, sure, but you're progressing the board, which is great.
Yeah, and like I said, I think the rest of the ramp package is pretty standard stuff.
Yeah,
I like the Black Market in there, but I don't worry about it too much.
Yeah, Black Market is kind of there a bit as a lightning rod, but if you can do anything with it, then it's already paid itself off. I mean, Black Market and Archfiend of Depravity are best buds in this deck.
Yes, they are. And I will say, I continue to use Black Market because my games are combat based, so you're going to see more creatures die. And my games My games tend to go longer than most games.
Yeah.
Our meta is a little slower than the average meta. So, if your games are over by turn 10, Black Market maybe isn't what you're looking for, just because you need 5 mana to play it out, and then you don't get any benefit until your next main phase on your next turn. So you're looking at turns 7, 8, 9 before it actually starts paying off. So
yeah. And I think with and I think the thing with Black Market too is that it's risky depending on your meta. And I feel like your meta especially doesn't really value enchantment removal as much as it should, but also is more worried about things that will affect their board than give you a lot of mana. Which is also dangerous.
Oh yes.
But excuse me. I think the thing with Black Market that is probably the biggest downfall in this deck is that it makes black mana.
Yeah.
And this is an extremely green deck.
It definitely leans green wise.
You're going to be using a lot of this black mana as generic costs.
Oh yes.
But
definitely, and honestly, there's nowhere. Well, I'm not sure there's nowhere. There are very few outlets for extra mana.
Yeah.
So it's not as though if you happen to get Black Market out before a mass removal spell and suddenly you've got 10 counters on it, there isn't that X spell that's going to let you use up all that mana. So there's a good chance that you're going to be, maybe not using all of it. But on the other hand, when you've got cards like Sword of the Animist or Whisper Silk Cloak, some of these other, and some of the other pieces of equipment that you want to move back and forth, you'll find ways to use up the mana. So.
For sure.
Yep.
Especially when you have things like Breaker of Armies, which I think flows right into the next section of lure type stuff.
Yes.
You had mentioned that Gorm is essentially lure, which for those who don't know is an enchant creature. So an aura for green 1, it says all creatures able to block enchanted creature. What? Oh, do so. Sorry.
Yeah.
Finish reading, Andy. And it's important here to make the distinction that Gorm is worse than Lure. Like, you can put Lure on Gorm to make Gorm better.
Right.
And with Gorm, it's essentially got Menace, unless you can only block with one.
Right.
It's very weird and convoluted. Lure, I feel like, is very straightforward of like, if you can block, you have to block with everything that can block.
Right. And that's what you want. That's what you really want from Gorm.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, I mean, like a card like Lure or even Gift of the Deity, you're going to want to put that on Gorm. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
It just makes Gorm better, and it makes Gorm do what you really wanted Gorm to do anyway. You want Gorm to go charging in and take the full hit. That's the whole point. That's the whole idea. Gorm, big, draws the crowd, and Virtus slips around the back to do one little point of damage. Who would worry about Virtus?
I do love, too, that with Lure and Gift of the Deity, like sure, Gorm is a 2/7. Is that what he was?
Yeah.
And 7 toughness is a lot. Sometimes Gorm won't die, and that's great for you.
Yes.
If Gorm doesn't die in combat, wonderful. If he does, oh well. You've got plenty of other creatures in this deck that will gladly, be the target for Gift of the Deity and Lore type stuff. Or Nemesis Mask. Nemesis Mask is nuts because Gorm will eventually die. Right. And then when he comes back, he can pick up the mask again.
Well, and
great.
More importantly, when Gorm dies, someone else can pick up the mask. I mean, Gerard, Mazarek, they can all hold that mask. Mazarek less so because if Mazarek flies, but pick your other creature. I personally like if I'm gonna run Nemesis Mask, then I want to run Glissa the Traitor.
Yeah.
That nothing like First Strike Death Touch on a Nemesis Mask.
It's rude.
Right. All the creatures must block. Glissa does 3 points of damage. 1, 1, and 1. Kill 3 of those creatures. And if more creatures are coming at you, well, all right then. Then the fourth creature might kill Glissa.
Yeah.
Glissa does have the 3 toughness. But that's the sort of thing. I mean, the Nemesis Mask and Lure and some of these other cards, they can all be put on any of these creatures. The key to remember, though, is that don't put it on a creature with evasion. You don't want to put your Lure on a flyer because then only the flyers have to block. And suddenly Virtus isn't getting the kind of protection that Virtus thought Virtus was going to get. So it's something to keep in mind. But that's part of the reason why Glissa's out there in the first place.
For sure.
That's the kind of lure target you want.
With that, let's quickly take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk about your Indestructible stuff. We'll talk about, your experience with this deck.
Sure.
Some of the other interesting notes and where you think you'll be going with this deck.
Yeah.
So we'll be right back. This episode of Temple of Falsebot is brought to you by Gift of Doom. What a crappy gift. This episode of Temple of Falsebot is brought to you by Gift of Doom. Perfect gift to re-gift. Welcome back. Took a nice long break so I could go get my laundry. More information than you need.
Say a piece of or a piece of a Kit Kat bar.
Oh, yeah. I could go for a Kit Kat. I haven't had Kit Kat in a while.
We'll take a break after the show.
We're here talking about Gorm, well, we're here talking about Virtus.
Yeah.
We're talking about a green-black Virtus deck that Gorm happens to be a part of.
Yes.
We discussed during our break how you kind of want to... There were a few cards that we kind of glossed over that we really want to make sure get into the episode. So I had mentioned Breaker of Armies, but then we went through the lore category, and I didn't even bring it back up. So Breaker of Armies is 8 mana, 10/8. All creatures able to block Breaker of Armies do so. It's a nice Eldrazi that's big and does the lure thing.
Right. And he doesn't have Annihilator. So you don't have to automatically hate him. Because every Eldrazi that has Annihilator makes your games miserable. Don't run them. Nobody wants to see this. Nobody. Even you will think this sucks very quickly. However, Breaker of Armies, no Annihilator, 10/8 creature, swing with Breaker of Armies and Virtus, and trust me, Breaker of Armies is not the problem between those two swinging. So, yeah. I love the card.
The other one is a sorcery that also draws you a card, which will inevitably bring us to go over your card draw. So if you want to talk about Irresistible Prey.
Yes, Irresistible Prey is a sorcery, so keep that in mind. For 1 green, target creature must be blocked this turn if able. Draw a card. So you're never going to do this as a combat trick on somebody else's turn. It doesn't have that kind of flexibility. This is straight up. You swing with a creature, or you swing with someone other than Virtus. You can use Irresistible Prey to force them to block that other, or to force them to use a creature to block that other creature.
It's really mostly only notable if they have one untapped creature.
The card is here because it draws a card, and it's somewhat relevant to what the deck is trying to do. It's a quasi-lore effect. It has that sort of thing. So that's why it's here. With some of these categories, with the card draw category, and I'm in black and green, you can use the standard ones that you use that people use in every single deck. And hey, I have Phyrexian Arena in the deck. I'm hardly immune to this, but I saw an opportunity here to put something in that was a little bit different, that fit with the theme of the deck. So I went with it. It's part of the reason why I've also got Infiltration Lens in the deck. It's not the most efficient way to draw a card, but whenever a equipped creature becomes blocked by a creature, you may draw 2 cards. Well, you equip this to Gorm. This is not one of those ones that you want to equip to Virtus. You want the creature to be blocked. So equip it to Gorm.
And now
and then you get to draw 2.
Well, yeah, and if if the situation is right where they do have the 2 creatures that have to block, you're going to be drawing 4.
Is it per creature?
Yeah, because it's not blocked by 1 or more creatures. It's blocked by a creature. So it's for each creature.
Right. So you're getting at least 4 cards, and if you've got lure on something, the Infiltration Lens gets crazy.
That's nuts. And that kind of goes, along the same kind of lines as Benefactor's Drought, which is a pricey card, but for 2 mana, it's an instant that I guess you have to do this before blocks are declared, right? Because otherwise, if you do it after blockers are declared, they're already blocking.
It's already blocking.
Yeah. So Benefactor's Drought says, untap all creatures. Until end of turn, whenever a creature an opponent controls blocks, draw a card. And draw a card. So it replaces itself immediately, even if nothing gets blocked.
Right. This one is nice. I like this because obviously because of the card draw, but it means Virtus untaps. I love having Death Touch creatures untapped on opponents' turns. It is amazing how many people are not willing to make a 1-for-1 trade with a Death Touch creature. I appreciate that Virtus is a 1/1, and I appreciate that you don't want to lose your 6/6 creature to my 1/1. But consider what Virtus does. If I am actually forced to block with Virtus on your 6/6, that's a huge loss for me. And I'm probably not going to do it. But most players see that death touch up and they don't want any part of it. It doesn't seem fair to them to lose their 6/6 to a 1/1, even if it has death touch, even if it's an essential card. They would rather find somebody else to do and get their 6 damage in.
Yeah. There's a lot of dials on this card, and I feel like the only one that is holding back is the fact that it says whenever a creature an opponent controls blocks. Like, I feel like the only tuning that this could have to make it even more of a tuned card is to just say whenever a creature blocks. I feel like that's the only thing holding this card back from being absolutely busted. It's a fun card. It's nifty. I don't think I've ever seen this card before, which is amazing.
Yeah, and honestly, for only 2 mana, that's pretty good.
It's wildly flexible.
Yeah. The other one is Tome of Legends. This is a 2 mana artifact, and it says when it enters the battlefield with a page counter on it. Whenever your commander enters the battlefield or attacks, put a page counter on Tome of Legends. So right off the bat, I thought, I've got 2 commanders, both of them want to attack, and odds are Virtus is going to be destroyed at least twice in the course of a game. So you could see Tome of Legends come out with 4 counters on it. And as far as the commanders attacking, both of them want to attack all the time. So I could, in theory, see 2 page counters getting put on this card every time it attacks. And then the other ability, spend 1 and tap it, remove a page counter from Tome of Legends, draw a card. I'm going to draw a card every turn. It's going to be an extra card draw every turn. Between Gorm and Virtus, there should be enough page counters on this thing that I should be able to turn the page on each of my turns. So.
Yeah. I do like that it's got the Titan effect of enter or attack.
Yeah.
Because if it was one or the other, it just I don't know if it'd be worth it. But the fact that it's both.
Right.
Nice.
If it's one or the other, then I think it turns into Tome of the Legends belongs in a deck that does a lot of flickering.
Yeah.
So you can bounce it, have it come back in, get a couple more counters, tap it, remove a counter, flicker it, have it come back again. But in a deck like this, yeah, I'm not worried about the end of the battlefield so much as I am. They're swinging. They're coming in. There's going to be attacks repeatedly. So, and we really want the commanders to attack. So,
yeah, there are a few other. You've got a few other categories.
Yeah.
Removal feels very straightforward.
Removal
I don't know if there's anything surprising in it. Is there anything that you want to highlight in there?
I mean, Vraska's a little different. But realistically, Vraska is only in there to destroy target non-land permanent.
Yeah.
You lose 3 loyalty, it goes down to 2. Okay, well then you plus Vraska until you can do the -3 again. You're never looking to do the -7. That's just not something I'm even interested in with this deck. It's just there to destroy the permanents. The one I haven't run in any deck is Mortality Spear. And I'm looking forward to trying this one out. It hasn't come up in the games that I've played so far, but I mean the spell costs 2 less to cast if you gain life this turn, and there's enough life gain effects in the deck that I could gain the 2 life.
You've got your food token from the gingerbread.
I've got the food token. I've got Guillaume. There are a couple other minor life gain options, so it can work. I mean, realistically though, 4 mana, destroy target non-land permanent. I'll take that every time. Yeah, at instant speed. I'm gonna take that. That's enough all by itself. So,
the big category I want to talk about here is Indestructible.
Okay.
You've got a variety of ways to do this.
Yeah, Indestructible is maybe a misnomer, but
I mean, you've got Dark Steel Plate, which is an equipment that gives things indestructible. It's 3 to play, 2 to equip. Dolmen Gate is 2 for an artifact that says prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to attacking creatures you control, which is when you want, Virtus to be indestructible. Or Gorm, for that matter.
And it works for Gorm.
Yeah.
With Virtus has Death Touch. So it just means, okay, if you can block Virtus, it means I'm killing your blocker, and Virtus isn't going anywhere. You're just preventing you're slowing the inevitable. And for Gorm, it means you put any two creatures in front of it, they're not going to kill Gorm. And it goes that way. And it works with all of the lure effects as well. So if all of the creatures are swinging at one, Dolmen Gate stuffs that.
Gift of Doom, which I'm reading this card, I think, for the first time. And that's really cool. So you can play it as a morph. So for 3 mana, you can play it as a 2/2 face down.
Yeah.
And then its morph cost is sacrifice another creature, which you, unlike Foretell, you can do on the same turn. Like, you don't have to wait for another turn.
Right.
It says enchant creature. Enchanted creature has death touch and indestructible, which is nice. You can also do this at instant speed. You can morph something at instant speed, and it's great. It says as it is turned face up, you may attach to a creature, which, I hope so.
Right. I looked at this and my thought initially was, well, that's great. I can put it on Virtus. And that way, if Virtus gets blocked, then it has indestructible. And then I'm like, no, dummy, you put it on Gorm. Or put it on the creature with lure, because now it has indestructible. Oh, by the way, it also has death touch. So now it's just, it's doing what Glissa the Trader does with a lure. You're just, you're one-shotting a number of creatures. That doesn't have mass removal, but boy, oh boy, that doesn't hurt.
Yeah, what I like about the morph being at instant speed too is that you can attack with Gorm, Virtus, and the morph, and then something blocks the morph, and then you can just kind of flip it and do it that way, so that it does take care of another blocker in terms of being blocked, or in terms of being not blocking Virtus necessarily.
Right, and I will give credit to our friend Josh. He played this in a game to great effect, and I remembered that. So,
Guardian Augmenter just seems sweet. 2 and a green, 2/2 flash. Commander creatures you control get +2/+2, but more importantly, commander creatures you control have hexproof, which, having 2 commanders, makes this even more value.
Yes, that was the whole thing. Just the hexproof and the front and the flash, that was enough for me. And then adding +2/+2 to both of them makes Gorm that much harder to kill. Virtus does a little bit of extra damage. It's It gives you the things that you want hexproof the most, that are most likely being targeted. Hexproof, and it doesn't go away as long as this creature's around. Like, it's not just like a one-time effect. It is just now a static ability. And it's great. Yeah.
You got Guillaume, which is fantastic if you've got food being made. He makes his own food, and then you use that food to give target creature indestructible until end of turn, which is, great.
Right. Guillaume is in here primarily because I have Guillaume and wanted to play it. And I thought, oh, sure, I'll probably, there aren't a pile of creatures in here. It's not as though there's so many of them that I'm going to pile up on food here. But there are enough of them that my thought was, fine, I'll have some food and be able to give my creatures indestructible every once in a while.
Yeah.
So
you've got Tamio's Safekeeping, which says target permanent you control gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. You gain 2 life. Realistically, this is a 1 mana savior commander deal.
Sure, every once in a while maybe you use it to protect your lure enchantment or something like that. But practically speaking, this is here to protect Virtus. And I'm not going to lie, a lot of times someone will target Gorm because they've made a mistake. Because no, Gorm is not the threat here. but they'll target Gorm, and I won't play it. I'll let Gorm die. And then the next person thinks, well, if Gorm died, then clearly he doesn't have any way to stop me from going after his other commander. And then that's when Tamiyo Safekeeping comes out, and it just, I mean, it's just a house. When your opponents really are fully expecting to see your commander die, and it just doesn't. It's like, no, full stop. You're not getting anything out of this. Oh, by the way, I'll gain 2 life just for kicks.
Yeah. So like that's pretty much the deck. Are there any creatures or anything that you want to talk about that you haven't?
If anybody's actually looking at the list, there's a section there called creatures. Now, it exists solely because I didn't have a good place to put, like, these are just random creatures I threw in.
Yeah.
Because this is the black and green deck that I have, and I decided I wanted some of these cards to go in there. I mean, Vigor I think makes sense, just because, you know, when Gorm swings, suddenly Gorm gets way bigger, because he's got 2 creatures trying to do damage to him as opposed to just 1.
Yeah.
The one that has been kind of a surprise for me and really shouldn't be is Gerard, Golgari Lichlord. He wraps up the game. A lot of times, when Virtus gets your opponent down to 10 or less life, suddenly swinging in with Virtus again isn't nearly as effective. Because
right.
If an opponent has 9 life, you swing with Virtus. Virtus brings them to 8. They lose half their life. They're down to 4. Okay, and that's fine, but it's not nearly as big as swinging for 20 or hitting for or doing 20. Losing 20 life. So I find that Gerard does a great job sort of finishing the game off.
Yeah.
I mean, Gerard, you sack a creature and all of your opponents are losing that life, not just one.
Yeah.
So it really does let you use Virtus and be like, no, don't worry. I'm never going to hit you again because I knocked you from 40 to 20. So you go after the next opponent, and by the time you get to that third opponent, everybody is down in the teens. All it takes is Gerard and maybe a Vulturous zombie or even some other creature that's, even just 5.
And if you had Marin out too, like, gross.
Right. So the other cards can do work, but they're mostly just there because they're good stuff.
Right.
Yeah. Quiet as Spike is there when Virtus isn't. And no, I'm not going to equip Quiet as Spike to Virtus so I can have it happen twice. It's there to create Virtus out of some other creature that I have. So the other one, which feels kind of like a throw-in, is Elbrus the Binding Blade. Equipped creature gets +1/+0, and then equipped creature deals combat damage to a player. Unattach the blade, and then it transforms into a big demon. It's there because it says when equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, and that's the whole point of Virtus. So if I can get Virtus to swing in with Elbrus, so if you're at 40, you lose 2 life because Elbrus gives Virtus +1, so you're down to 38. Virtus then does his ability. You lose half of that. You're 19. So you're down to 19 life. Oh, and by the way, I've just dealt damage to you. Elbrus flips and becomes Withengar Unbound, a 13/13 flying intimidate trample. And then whenever a player loses the game, put 13 counters on Withengar Unbound. But I just thought, you know what? This is one of those decks where this card could actually work. And so far, what it's done is protect Virtus, because I did actually hit once with Elbrus attached to Virtus. It created Withengar, and someone decided that Withengar was way worse than Virtus and destroyed Withengar. And I said, thank you. And then I swung at someone else and took another 20 life off of them with Virtus.
Very nice. So,
one last one. Something that's not in the deck. And if you were looking to run Virtus either with Gorm or without, it's something you'll want to consider. Anything that can give Virtus double strike is just going to be good. Virtus with double strike means Virtus hits the first time, halves the remaining life total, then hits again and halves it again. So a person goes from 40 to 39 to 19 to 18 to 9. So you're taking somebody from 40 to 9 in a single swing with Virtus using anything with double strike attached to Virtus. That's just horrific. And if you go from 9 and do it again, well, 9 to 8 to 4 to 3 to 1. I mean, that is just nasty. It's part of the reason that I haven't put double strike in here.
I mean, it's it's kind of the same as doing it with Quietus Spike.
It is, and that's part of the reason why I don't put Quietus Spike on Virtus.
Right.
I don't want my opponents to see Virtus and think, if I get hit even once, the game is just over. Because then no one's willing to risk even letting you get to combat. Whereas you want your opponents to sort of be out there, especially when everybody's at a higher life total. Then it's amazing. People are willing to roll the dice. It's like, well, I'm one of 3 people. Odds are he won't swing at me because there are 2 other people. So I will take my chances with that. And that's great. But I don't, it's a different story when I say that, okay, well, I'm going to take you down to 9 while the rest of us are at 40. That's a harsh swing. So I haven't done it, but if you want to give it a shot, it's certainly out there.
I still have yet to play against this deck, so I hope that I hope it's still together next time we play a game.
I expect that it will be.
I like where this deck is. I like where it's headed. I like knowing that it wins often. It's just
so far so good. Maybe I'll hit a bad string of games, but for now, away we go.
Yeah. We've got the link in the description below. And if you have any questions about this deck, feel free to reach out to us.
Yes. If you've got any suggestions for additions, feel free to reach out to us.
Reach out to us. Put it in the comments.
Yes.
If you are unaware, we also have YouTube now. We have YouTube.
Hey.
I've been uploading videos of these podcasts to YouTube for the past 17 or so episodes. Yeah. And I think they're pretty neat. They're pretty cool.
Yeah.
So check us out there. Share us with your friends. I think they would think that we're pretty cool.
They ought to.
I don't know why they wouldn't.
No idea.
But we'll be back next week with a cool episode. Cooler than this one. Which this one's pretty cool. If I say it enough, maybe it'll be true. We have no idea what we will be back with next week, but it's going to be cool because we're Temple of False Pod. Our decks are not optimized, but our plays sure as heck are fun. I'm Andy.
I'm Bruce.
Have a cool night. Play some magic for me. And may your 5th land be the Temple. Wait. Before you go, I just wanted to say thank you for listening. You can reach out to us via email at falsepodmtg@gmail.com or on Twitter @falsepodmtg. Bruce is @manaburned, and I'm @AndyWeekend, though you'll definitely notice I use the podcast Twitter far more often. Now that we've got you here, make sure you subscribe, rate us on whatever podcast platform you use. It helps us out. It gets us more reach. Subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. Like a video there. Leave some comments for more casual enjoyment. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back with some more timeless discussions about all things casual. So come hang out, and may your 5th land be the Temple. Bye-bye. Should I do my best, Bruce? Bye!